We know that recent governments have really focused on attracting manufacturing. Why hasn't that created more jobs?
Well, manufacturing used to be the East Asian way of growth, right? You start with low-skilled manufacturing because of low wages. You attract a lot of foreign direct investment, and you cater to global markets. Well, every element there is under threat. First, what emerging markets now are competing with is not industrial country workers, but other emerging markets who have equally low wages, but also with industrial country robots. So in a sense, the competitive advantage of low wage workers has gone. Another problem is that, you have a lot more protectionism now. Part of the problem is China came in a really big way. And China is still a big part of manufacturing, a part which many developed countries are now wary of. And it's hard to see room for another China-sized country. India has 1.4 billion people, for another China-sized country coming into manufacturing. So newly developing countries like India have to find a different path for growth.
In fact, you've written that India, unlike China, has missed the bus on manufacturing. Do you really see it as being too late when we know that many countries are, in fact, trying to diversify away from China? Would that not be potentially to India's gain?
I think that would be to India's gain, and India should attract as many of those flows as it can. And it's having some success, perhaps not as much as Vietnam and Mexico, but it is having some success there. But I think India should play on a couple of other factors. One, it has a large domestic economy. In 2 or 3 years, India's economy will be bigger than both Japan and Germany at the current pace of growth. So that's one attraction for foreign investors coming into India. But another attraction has to be that India is doing really well in services, including service exports. Many of these are at the higher end, consulting services, IT services, legal services. JP Morgan has 3,000 lawyers in India serving its global businesses. So I think that could be another place for growth. It is not going to be a huge employer, but it's going to be a huge foreign exchange earner.
You've written that India needs to really pivot from brawn to brain, that instead of focusing on low-skilled assembly manufacturing like China did decades ago, that again, it should really look to these higher value parts of the manufacturing chain, like chip design maybe, also the services sector. As you touched on earlier, though, with the issues in education, in training, in access to education, is that transition enough to these higher value forms of services and manufacturing? Is that really enough to absorb the amounts of jobs that this economy needs?
No, it is not. So that's going to be the leading edge. India already has 300,000 chip designers working for companies like Qualcomm and Broadcom across the world. What it needs to do is also create jobs for the many people who have, moderate quality university education or even moderate quality high school education. And that means, lower skilled service jobs, tourism, retail, entertainment, hospitality. Those jobs have been, growing in India. That's where much of Indian employment has taken place. But as our cities grow, there will be many more jobs of that kind which will be created. And what we have to do is make sure that those jobs are reasonable jobs with adequate protections, adequate health care, and so on. And we need many, many more of them. So we have to work on every part of the spectrum. Again, that is not to deny that we also can benefit from manufacturing jobs. Any manufacturing that comes to India because of India's improved infrastructure, India's improved capabilities amongst its workers will be really welcome. But we need to work on all fronts, and certainly we cannot afford to ignore services.